Welcome to the Murali End. I'm Dominic Machado, and today I am joined by Estelle Vasudevan, Sri Lanka's #1 cricket journalist, and Nick Brooks, Sri Lanka's premier cricket historian. We've got a lot of topics today. We've got about 1 week till the men's national side gets back into action after a long time away. So a lot of topics are coming up. We will start though today about talking about the prospective test squad for Sri Lanka versus Bangladesh next week. Now, rumors are going around, sort of semi-confirmed squad lists are going around. So again, we're living in a world where we're pretty sure that there's going to be a squad. It's a squad of 18, which Sri Lanka have carried. I think they carried 18 last time for a home test against Australia. So that's in keeping. But the list looks like this. We've got Dhananjaya De Silva, Pathum Nissanka, Oshada Fernando, Lahira Udara, Dinesh Chandimal, Angelo Matthews, Kamindu Mendes, Kusal Mendes, Sonal Danusha, Pawan Ratnayaka, Pasinda Surya Bandara, Prabhat Jayasuriya, Akila Dhananjaya, Narinda Ratnayaka, Asita Fernando, Vishwa Fernando, Lahira Kumara, and Milan Ratnayaka. The thing that is notable is I think we would have there are 5 potential debutants: Lahira Udara, Sonal Danusha, Pawan Ratnayaka, Pasinda Surya Bandara, and Tharindu Ratnayaka in that squad of 18. So, Nick, I'm going to come to you first. The 2 big changes that Sri Lanka are going to have is Dimuth is now out of the squad, and Angelo will make way into after that first test match, that farewell test match against Bangladesh. Who do you think is going to come in for Dimuth in that first test, and who do you think will come in for Angelo in the second?
Hey, Dom. I'd expect Oshada Fernando to come in for Dimuth. He played when Pathum was injured, and he got 2 low ones against Australia, right? And I think he had a pretty horrible review on an LBW decision, if memory serves. But that seems like a small sample size to rule him out. He's done really well in the NSL. He's scored runs for Sri Lanka at home and abroad at #3 before. So I'd expect Oshada Fernando to continue at the top, at least in the short term. Spare a thought for Nishan Madushka, who was dropped under harsh circumstances in England, didn't do a load wrong, and now finds himself well on the outside, kind of seemingly 4th in line. And I think when it comes to Angelo making way for the second test, I'd expect Pasindu Surya Bandara to be the guy who benefits. If you look at his first-class record now, I think he's averaging a shade under 57 with 12 first-class tons. So, it's like that kind of Pathum Kamindu record that we saw, and he seems to have been the next cab off the rank for a long time. But look, if they give it to Pawan Ratnayaka, equally really excited to see how he goes, right? Anyone who scores a 4th innings 100 in South Africa in blazing style is clearly someone to watch out for. And there's other guys outside of this squad who I'm excited about. Ahan Wickramasinghe, I think, just got a couple of low ones in the emerging team, which we'll talk about later. But he's another really exciting guy. Nuanindu hasn't quite scored the volume of runs, but whenever I've seen him bat, he looks amazing. I wonder whether there might be a thought about getting Charith back into the Red Bull setup now that they're a little shy on experience. So I think the great thing for Sri Lanka is that there are options, right? Once upon a time, it felt like those didn't exist, and now it's a real bit of a barroom brawl for who's going to get those last couple of spaces. Obviously sad to see legends like Dimuth and Ange depart, but really great to see new guys who've been waiting in the wings for a while, who are thoroughly deserving of opportunities, getting a go, because ultimately you can never tell how someone's going to do until they get the chance. We saw it with Pathum, we saw it with Kamindu, and I hope we are onto a couple of good ones in Pasindu and Pawan.
Estelle, do you agree? Do you think those are the 2 that'll come in?
Yeah, I think, look, in the middle order, it's very difficult to look past Surya Bandara, right? Like Nick mentioned, the type of record he's had and the way he's gone about things over the last couple of years in domestic cricket and List A cricket, in A is an exciting prospect. Like he's got the kind of game that can really, it's the type of game that you want to see now, right? In test cricket that's being played recently with the kind of baseball type of approach that a lot of countries are taking on. He's the type of player who can play that kind of cricket. So it'd be interesting to see in which direction they go. But at the moment, I think Pasindu certainly looks like the front runner to take that spot. I wonder if he is a left-hander, right? So whether the conversation of having come into and him in the middle order is a question. I don't think it should be. For the opening spot, I think Oshada would be very unlucky if he didn't get in, right? Because like he's had the opportunity. He started off so well, then he dropped off. I think because he was terrible at ODI cricket, right?
Yeah.
And then kind of got a couple more opportunities, didn't do so well. So I think the question is, do you want a 30 plus player there, or do you want to give a younger player a go? But I mean, Udara is 30 plus as well, right? So there's not much to choose between those two. So I'd definitely go with the guy who's shown you what he's capable of.
Yeah, I think Estelle, you bring up a really interesting point, right? The age of Udara and Fernando, they're both 30 plus, right? So it seems like the idea is if Potham is opening, they want to have someone who's more experienced, maybe to play an anchor role, maybe to kind of allow Potham to play his more natural game. Because one of the guys who I thought might be a good fit for this squad would be someone like Kamil Mashara, especially if you're kind of thinking a few years down the road as an opening batter. He's certainly looked good. He's put together some good scores. So the choice of Ashada and Lahiru over the likes of Nishan Madushka and Kamil Mashara is very much, I think, a stability thing, right? You go from having someone like Dimuth who you can count on match in, match out to get you runs. So you probably want to replace that with someone who at least will not gift their wicket up at the top. It's super exciting, though, to see Pawan and Pasindu kind of on the edge of this squad. I think one question that kind of I'm thinking about is, where do they bat? Do they take Angelo's number 4 spot, or do they move things around? Does someone like Dhananjaya move up one spot? Does Kamindu move up one spot? How does, as Estelle brought up, the left-hand, right-hand combination bit play into how they manage it? So I would like to see them come in at sort of a 6 role. I think that's the sort of softest landing spot for these batters, right? Rather than say, okay, come in at 4, and then day one you come in at 10 for 2 or whatever it is, and there's a lot of pressure on you. So I'd like to see them bat at that 6, but I don't know what their plans are with Kamindu and DDS in terms of their batting spots. Like my thought is, once Chundi retires, you'd imagine that Kamindu would move into that 3 spot, right? That seems like the home for him. And then I'd like to see DDS move up, but I don't know. And so I think maybe it'll depend on whether it's Pasindu or Pawan Ratnayaka, right? Because I think maybe Pasindu they might trust more at 4, but Pawan would probably be a better at 6. The other thing I want to pick your brains about is the spin trio or quartet here has changed, right? So last series against Australia, we had Prabhat Jayasuriya. Nishan Puris played, I believe, the first test, and then they brought in Ramesh Mendes. Both Puris and Mendes are gone from the squad. In their place, we have Akila Dhananjaya, who sort of dominated the NSL with 37 wickets, I believe. And then I think the next highest was 15, Tharindu Ratnayaka, who's also in the squad, right? Known for being an ambidextrous bowler, not like Kamindu, but actually an ambidextrous bowler whose first kind of port of call is bowling. And then we have, on top of that, Sunal Dhanusha, who is a slow left armer. He's been playing a lot in the A team and the emerging team. He's even been getting caps in those squads ahead of someone like Duneth Walalage. He boasts a first-class average of 40, though we should always note that Ramesh Mendis, I think when he came into the test squad, had a first-class average of 45, a triple century to his name. Doesn't always translate super well. So Sri Lanka will certainly look to play spinners, at least 2 spinners. In your mind, Estelle, who's going to be the guy who gets that second spot alongside Prabhath?
Yeah, be really interested to see what the thinking is behind the changes, because for the longest time Nishan or Ramesh Mendis has been kind of in the squad for the longest time, right? And he's been trusted as that second spin bowler for Sri Lanka. It feels like at long last they've decided to move on from him. I'm surprised that Nishan hasn't made the squad. I wonder if there is some injury concern or something, because he is the type of bowler, like he's really tall, he can get that extra bounce, and he's got kind of the skills that may not necessarily be. I mean, Ramesh Mendis is the kind of bowler who gets a lot of revs on the ball and spins the ball a lot, right? Despite being a finger spinner. I don't think Nishan is quite in that class, but he seemed to offer a bit more control than Ramesh in the games that he's played. So I think it's a bit disappointing that he hasn't got the opportunity. But you've also got to think about, why you have the domestic tournaments, right? Like if you're not rewarding players based on their performances there, then there's no purpose in it. So Akila Dhananjay, despite us, I think all three of us are probably a bit skeptical about his inclusion, because we've seen him. He's been around forever, right? But at the end of the day, if he's been the one that's performed in the domestic scene, then it's only right that he's given that opportunity. I think he might be the second spinner despite Tarindu being in the squad. If this is actually the squad that they go with, I think that he'd probably be the second spinner. I'm very interested to see what their thought process is on speeds of bowling, because that is one of the areas that Sri Lanka had trouble with, right? In the tests against Australia, where we just didn't have the pace to really trouble the batters, whereas the Australian spinners were bowling at a much quicker pace and were able to run through the Sri Lankan side in both games. So that will be interesting to see whether that's a consideration they will be making. Because if that is the case, to be honest, like I don't know how available he is, but someone like Mahesh Theekshana or even Dunit are the guys who bowl quick, right? In the Sri Lankan setup, they're the ones who can, crank up that pace. So I really like to see somebody talk about that as well, about like the pace, and is that some kind of consideration they have when picking those, whether it's one extra but like a second spinner or second and third spinner.
Estelle, I think that point about pace is really important. There's a sort of old school approach to spin bowling, at least in the test side, where float it up nice and slow, extract turn, right? But we saw with modern day batsmanship, that is not a good strategy in test cricket, right? Because you can just get boshed about if you're not willing to vary your speeds. I thought Prabhath adjusted to that. He showed the ability to adjust to that. But I think having a second spinner who feels really comfortable, and it's kind of surprising that Will Alagay has not really gotten a bite at the cherry here, because I do think his skill set is really suitable for test cricket, right? He can bowl at pace. He's good on turning wickets, and you get that fielding ad and a batting ad as well. I think that's maybe what they're thinking with Sonal Danusha. But going into a match with two slow left armers is a bit of a dangerous matchup issue, unless Dhananjaya is going to bowl himself more. I will, so I'm curious to see, and I think Akila is pretty good at varying pace and flight, certainly, because again, he came up as a white ball bowler and has those tricks. Nick, what do you think about the second spinner question?
Yeah, I'd agree with Esti that I think Akila's probably in the prime spot to take it. I am a little skeptical. It's wild that he's still only 31. In my head, Akila Dhananjaya has been playing cricket for about 4 decades and is 65. But I mean, he's done really well in the NSL. And from what I've seen, when he briefly played, he played a couple of ODIs not long ago, right? And he looked like kind of quite a different bowler to the bowler who I remember in Test cricket sending down, you know, like off breaks and googlies and caroms and all sorts. More of a conventional off spinner. So I'd be interested to see him get another go in Tests. I remember that brief period in sort of 2018 when he was really like on top of the world. I also wonder for that second Test whether they might think of including Sonal Danusha as like a third spinner who bats at 7, push Kusal up 1 to 6, and then have 3 frontline spin options. Interesting to see how they go. But I echo SD's thoughts that if Nishan Peiris isn't injured, I think he's been really hard done by, because I was impressed by what I saw of him against New Zealand. He had a tough time in that first Australia Test, but I thought he looked like he could be a good foil for Prabha. And also, I take your point, Dom, about Welalage and Deeks. I've always thought that both of those guys could be good bowlers, especially on Sri Lankan wickets in 5-day cricket. I think someone like Deeks on tracks like Gul Get, day 4 and 5, where you don't have to turn the ball a lot, but you've got enough tricks and variations, I think he could be really handy. So I wonder whether that's in their thinking at all, whether that's something he's interested in. I guess there's a lot of variables there that we don't quite know.
Yeah, I think just to pick up the Theeks question, I think we saw him against New Zealand on some very sort of spinny pitches do a lot at a high pace, where, you know, he's pitching the ball up at 100 kilometers per hour and still getting big turns. So you can imagine, right, like at Gaul, he could do some pretty big damage. Before, still have some questions about the bowling, but before we get into this, 2 questions have popped up in the chat. So Dinesh asks if we have any update on Kamindu's injury, right? You all will recall that he was injured, I think, running sort of in a run chase in the IPL. Will he play Test? Well, he's in the squad, so we'd imagine that means he's okay, but we haven't heard anything. Maybe that's why they are carrying both Pasindu and Pawan, is they think that there's a chance they might need 2 people to come in. So we'll see about that. I have not heard any particular updates. Estelle or Nick, anyone know anything about Kamindu?
No, it looked to me like that kind of like strained running injury. It wouldn't be something long lasting, but as a kind of tangential point, I mean, if they go 1-up in this series, I don't mind them trying out a couple of guys against Bangladesh. I know that won't happen, but I would not at all be against them throwing Pasindu and Pawan in together and see who goes better. But it's not going to happen.
And then to kind of follow up, Dinesh asks about why we're skeptical of Akila. Who wants to take this? I'm happy to take this. It's frustrating, especially with a bowler whose action has been judged as dodgy in the past, right? And it's not a one-time thing. It's happened several times where he goes back, he cleans it up, he reinvents himself. And one of 2 things either happens, right? Either he's been ineffective when he comes back, or he gets called again, which makes it really hard to create consistency. I'm imagining that SLC has a lot of faith in his action if they're bringing him back into a Test squad, because he was kind of the point of difference early on in that 2018 England series, and then gets called, and that kind of changes the sort of trajectory of his career. So for me, it's the risk that he brings, is that it's not that he can't turn the ball or do things or cause trouble for batters. He certainly can do that, but you wonder sort of his mental stability when you're thinking, okay, I got to make sure that I'm bowling correctly. Does he have faith in his skills? I think I remember Shane Warren said this, kind of poking at Murali, like, you can't tell if a bowler really chucks till they're tired, and, you know, what's their natural action. So that's another thing that I'd be worried about. You know, he's bowled 20 overs and he's getting a little bit tired. How do we know that there's no reversion to sort of old school styles? But so that's why I feel skeptical of Achilles. We've seen it happen. We've seen his waxing and waning, and it's not just form. It's related to an actual skill set that he brings.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an issue that certainly you have to consider, right? Because it's been something that's coming on. And the other thing is that, you know, Dinet says it in his question itself that he's waxed and waned, and we've seen what he's capable of, right? It's been that inconsistency. Maybe you can also say that he hasn't got the opportunities in Test cricket really to, at least in recent times, to show what he's capable of. But he hasn't really been like he hasn't impressed enough that you would think he should be a shoe in the Test team, right? So that, along with what you mentioned, Dom, I think should be something that they've considered. But like I said before, I mean, if you are to give any importance to the domestic setup, then you have to reward players who are doing well there, right? So he's done well. He deserves his spot in the side. Um, but I mean, whether he's that those performances will really reflect in how he's in international cricket, we'll have to wait and see.
Yep, yep. This also brings up the question of, I think, Nick, you asked if they might have three frontline spinners. I wonder if it's an option that they go with three frontline seamers, actually, because I'm thinking it's Bangladesh, right? The way Bangladesh is going to win this test is likely if their spinners take a bag full of wickets. They do have a respectable pace attack. Ebadat Hussain is nothing to sneeze at, and they've got good pace. But I think we've seen Vishwa, Lahiru, and Asita all perform at very, very high levels. So deciding which of those guys makes it into the squad is tough. And even someone like Kasan Rajatha, who has been tearing it up in county cricket, right? I think he took a 5 for the other day. Doesn't find his way into the squad, right? There are 4 seamers if we're including Milan Ratnayaka. So there's also that flexibility of who do we play, and that's maybe where you can see someone like Sunal Dhanusha coming in as you play 3 seamers and then 2 spinners. So I'm curious how many and which of the fast bowlers you think Sri Lanka is going to go with. So Nick, I'll go to you first on that.
I think they'll go 2, and I think it has to be Asi, and I would go Lahiru for the second one. When they picked Ratnayaka, I can't remember whether it was against Australia or New Zealand. He was kind of criminally underused, right? I think he bowled like a couple of overs. I think Asitha's been under bowled in Sri Lanka in recent times. I think he can be really effective. Short spells with the new ball, but also when nothing's happening, he can bowl reverse swinging Yorkers and he can go short. I'd like to see him bowling more at Gaul, and Lahiru Kumara is just like that guy who also can come and pick up a wicket bowling hard lengths, can maybe rough batters up when nothing's going on. So those would be my 2, I think. Well, I'm interested to hear where you guys would go, though.
Yeah, so what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I think you obviously have to go with Asita, and Lahiru Kumara has shown that he's kind of that X factor type of bowler that you need. And if they are gonna go with 2 or 3 spinners, then you'd expect them to not need someone like Kumara to be bowling 20 overs a day, right? He'll be able to come in those short spells and try to ruffle up the batter. So Asita for sure, and Kumara should be the second. I think it would be great if they can go with 3 paces, but it's very unlikely to happen, right? Like, I mean, in Sri Lanka, it's very unlikely. So I would have Kumara in if it was 2 or 3 seamers. So if they do end up going with 2, he's got to be that second guy, just because he adds that impact, right? That value that you have as someone who can really change things up in that bowling lineup.
Yeah, I 100% agree with the both of you. And I think the point about captaincy is going to be really important, because I think in Kumara and Asita, you have bowlers who can be dangerous at any phase of the game, right? Especially if you use them correctly. So thinking about, okay, how do I use pace and with spin, right? And not just kind of do the preset, okay, we're going to just bowl for the next 20 overs, we're just going to bowl spin. But how do we unsettle batters? And especially against Bangladesh, I think, it's not like you're bowling against Australians who feel very comfortable with pace. I think Bangladesh will be expecting spin, and using pace as a weapon is really is important. And I think I love to see Lahiru kind of get into the series and be aggressive and be at the batters, because it's always way more fun when that happens, to add that energy. Okay.
We've got the same old issue though of 8, 9, 10, and Jack look like 4 number 11s. And I don't know, it's interesting to see how long Sri Lanka can go with that setup before it becomes a real issue, right? Because it was really costly in South Africa. And I mean, I suppose that's where someone like Welalage potentially becomes super valuable, right? As a number 8 who can hang around.
Yeah. And Yuvashant has brought up the Welalage question and then asked, why can't we produce seamer-friendly pitches that either turn from day one or as flat as a road when they leave some grass? I think it would be a good idea to think about what a pitch would look like, where maybe you get seam and swing on days 1 and 2, right? And then it'll eventually turn days 3, 4, and 5. Whether Gaul can do that and has been curated to do that, I think is the bigger question. And I think we've talked about this, the possibility, there's the financial implications of reusing the same ground, right? Like it saves you money rather than saying, okay, we need to go to Colombo or we need to go to Asagiria. I think you're right about the sort of back end of the batting. Prabhat sort of can hold a bat. Akila can actually hold a bat.
Prabhat can hold a bat, but he doesn't like to stick around. That's the problem.
Yeah,
he'll swing.
Yeah, and I think Akila can hold is actually not that bad. I think that might be a reason why he's around. It's kind of was a shame against Australia. Kusal played these kind of amazing knocks from number 7, but there was no one sticking around to kind of support him and turn those into match changing knocks. So I think that's where Sonal Danusha is someone who's definitely on the radar, or Milan Ratnayaka, because they know just having someone who can stick around for a little bit more. I think, and Prabhat can hold the bat, but at 8, you want someone who could do a little bit more, right? So we'll see what happens. Okay, let's change tack to another longer format game. So currently, the Sri Lankan emerging team is in West Indies again and playing against the West Indies Academy. They're playing 2 4-day games and then a set of 1-day games. We're on day 3 of Sri Lanka's of the first 4-day match. Sri Lanka batted first, scored 292, powered by a 130 from Sohan De Oliveira in 110 balls. Sri Lanka blazed out to a good start and then fell apart in the middle, but Sohan kind of rescued them from that situation. West Indies was bowled out for 214, where and kind of the key player for Sri Lanka, and that was Dulaj Samudita. He's a left arm medium pacer, and Ashin Daniel also pitched in with some wickets with his off spin, someone to keep an eye on as that second spinner spot remains kind of unsettled. And then Sri Lanka have responded with 219. They got off to a great start with Ravindu Rusanta and Chevan Daniel both scoring 50s. They were 105 for no loss, 18 overs in. But again, they had a bit of a stinker in the middle overs, and they rebounded to 219. So West Indies Academy is chasing 298 for the win on day 3. We talked a little bit about the squad. Any things that stand out to either of you about this match, or any performances that were interesting to take note of?
To me, I think Ashin Daniel is one, because I think, was it during Mickey Arthur's tenure, somewhere close to that period, he was like almost in the squad, right? He was kind of knocking on the door, and that's when we saw someone like someone like Ramesh Mendis really come and shine, right? But he just couldn't break it into the side, and now he finds himself in the emerging squad, not even kind of in the pecking order to get into the national team. So certainly he'll be one of the guys who will want to prove himself, because he was that close, and he's kind of a good off spinning option, right? And that's what Sri Lanka kind of looking at right now. So to me, that is one that stood out, and I like the fact that, again, as we spoke about when we were talking about Pavan Ratnayaka, you've got batters in that middle order who can score fast. Like Sri Lanka have gone at above 4 runs and over in that first innings, just under 4 runs and over in the second innings. So it's yes, I understand it's about getting the result that you want. It's about getting the wins, but also as the game is moving towards quicker scoring, it's good to see that capability being encouraged within, like, not just the national side, but in the the kind of upcoming sides as well. So that is a bit exciting to me, just seeing how fast they've gone about things, and like having the capability in particular, like De Oliveira, to get to a big score like 130 of 110, not just a little cameo.
Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see Ravinder Asantha and Shevon Daniel opening the batting together. I saw a lot of Ravinder Asantha, Ravi De Silva, as we used to call him, at St Thomas's, and he scored loads of runs. He hit one of the biggest sixes I've ever seen by a schoolboy, and then disappeared for a couple of years. So no, it's nice to see him opening with Shevon Daniel, who I think is one of the most exciting players I've seen coming through in terms of top order batters in Sri Lanka for a while. So that's great. The other thing that struck me was just that these guys are kind of spread far and wide in terms of where they've come from. It's not the same, like everyone from Western Province, from the big cricket schools. There's guys in this squad who've emerged from all over. So I think more broadly, that's a really promising sign for Sri Lanka, that scouting is kind of spreading its wings, and that we're seeing talent emerge from all over the island. I think that can only be a good thing moving forward.
Yeah, I think to the kind of two things that I took away is seeing these guys who've kind of been sidelined a little bit, right? Shevon Daniel was all the rage a couple years ago. Ravinder Asantha, again, a few years back, was all the rage. Ashan Daniel, as Estelle mentioned, was sort of knocking on the door of the national team. But now these guys have found themselves back, right? They're finding their way to make a mark and to fight. And to see that is really, really good, because we all know that talents can kind of wane, right? Like you can be the apple of everyone's eye one day, and then the next day, no one wants to look at you. So this opportunity to play, I think, is so good for these players, right? To be competitive, to feel like they're part of the team, to be a part of the series. So seeing the likes of Ravindu and Shevon Daniel and Sohan De Oliveira kind of show out is really good. One thing to back up Estelle's point, Ashan Daniel got out 2 of the 3 left-handers in the West Indies side, which is just such a huge thing to be able, as an off spinner, to be reliable in getting lefties out. So that was really good. 2 guys who've kind of underperformed, Nipun Dhananjaya and Ahan Wickramasinghe, right? Guys, again, we've kind of been waiting to break out, right? We've expected them to break out for a bit. So hopefully they'll go on to have a good rest of the series from that point on, especially Nipun Dhananjaya, who's a former under-19 captain, who, again, right, a lot of these guys have the skill and the talent, but we might not necessarily see them till they actually break through, right?
Yeah.
It's a long line, and credit to SLC for something they've done with both the men and women's team, is getting more of these A and emerging tours in, so that these players can actually get that experience at the highest level in different places, whether it's in West Indies, whether it's in Australia. Great for them to do that, and they should absolutely keep it up. Couple small little things that we wanted to touch on. So one is, as other people have covered, SSC was recently relegated to the B tier, right? The second division of Sri Lanka's major club tournament, and they made it to the final of the T20 tournament, and they lost to the Malay club. Okay, in the final, they scored 100 runs in 19.4 overs, and this was a team that had the likes of Avishka Fernando, Charith Asalanka, and Dasun Shanaka in it. Estelle, what do you make of SSC losing this match, and losing this match with its big game players in it?
Look, it's not the place that they want to be, is it? Because they've got the players to really do well, but performances have not been, they haven't been able to put things together. And I know, if you talk to people in Sri Lanka cricket, I don't mean the organization, but people like who follow Sri Lanka cricket, everyone's kind of trying to find loopholes how you get SSC back. You have to get them in the top tier. They're one of the oldest clubs in the country, one of the most prominent clubs in the country. But this is how it should be, right? This is how it should be. It should be based on merit, on how well you perform. And no matter what type of players you have, what your budget is, how old, what kind of history you have, if you can't put the performances together on the field, then that's how the system should work, right? And as disappointing as it is to have a team like that with such talented players, a lot of youngsters in that side, having these kind of performances, that's the way the game goes, right? Like, you have to deal with it. Like, if they can't put together good performances, then they don't deserve to be in the top tier, and they don't deserve to be in the company of other teams that are doing well.
Absolutely. And all the more with that level of talent, right? There should be no excuse. And even the guys who aren't sort of on...
And resources, right? Like,
exactly.
Talk about the grounds, the gyms, everything at their disposal.
Yep. And these are, even if the best players, the SSC's best players, aren't there, they still have a really, really, really good side, right? They have guys who are earmarked for stardom in the future. They just need to play better. And I agree with Estelle, right? Like, if you're going to have a lot of club teams, make them earn their place there. Nick, your thoughts on it, and sort of maybe some historical precedent for what's going on?
Yes, wild, and it's worrying. Quick word on the Malays. Big up Malay CC, because
yes.
I think, I might be wrong about this, but they're one of the oldest clubs in Sri Lanka after the CCC and the Colts. I think they might be the third oldest, certainly way older than the likes of NCC, SSC, Tamil Union, dating back, if memory serves right, to the 1850s. I actually didn't realize they still existed. So I was chuffed to see the Malays back in the headline. Big up Malay CC. But yeah, I mean, for SSC, for a team with Avishka, Dasun, and Charith batting in the top six to be bowled out for 100. I couldn't get a scorecard, so I couldn't see where it was played, but it looked like the SSC from the pictures that I saw. So I assume that it wasn't a terrible track or anything that has caused this to happen, that it's just batting fallibilities. Worrying that guys who we're relying on to make runs for Sri Lanka are being blown out by a second tier side, but it's great for cricket. Great to see. And as SD says, this is what club cricket's about, right? If you're going to have all these teams, then you want it to be competitive. It can't be safeguarded. So the top sides always get their way. And so it's great to see, and maybe opening people's eyes to a depth of talent across Sri Lanka, which has often been assumed doesn't exist.
Yeah, like I just pulled up the scorecard. This is the top 7. Chamindu Wickramasinghe, Krishan Sanjula, Dasun Chanaka, Dinura Kalupahana, Avishka, Charith, Nuwanindo batting at 7. I mean, you could think of a lot. There are a lot of critiques you might make of that particular lineup order, but those guys are all extraordinarily talented players who should be scoring more than, sometimes it's not your day. That's fair. But scoring more than 100 runs in a final. And really cool info, Nick, on Malay CC and their sort of long history, and it's great to see them do so well. And hopefully, SSC will right the ship and get their big name players to play well and play for that side. Okay. Next bit of news, speaking about domestic cricket in Sri Lanka, is that there are rumors going around that the LPL 2025 may be postponed. Again, nothing official yet, nothing from SLC yet. We shouldn't expect anything official from SLC yet. But it's certainly worrying to hear that this sort of premier domestic tournament, something that's sort of the jewel in the crown of Sri Lanka's domestic competitions, is looking like it might be a non-starter. Nick, what do you think about this? It's a shame we don't have Mark here, because this would get Mark all fired up and he'd get all riled up, but he's enjoying a nice little vacation in Canada. So Nick, what do you think?
I'll do my best Mark impression, man. I'm so pissed off with the way the LPL has been managed, or should I say mismanaged. It is just it's really bad. I'm going to say it's bordering on disgraceful. Last time out, they couldn't even get a UK broadcast deal. I bought a VPN so I could try and watch it via the SLC YouTube. That didn't work either. This year, I mean, yeah, it seems to be at a different time every year with new team owners, with teams that carry different names, and there's just no continuity or no congruence. And we've talked about how Sri Lanka has benefited from its proximity to India and how it's got a friendly relationship. And I mean, if the LPL was properly run, surely this is a perfect investment ground for IPL owners, right? It's so close to India. They could use it as a kind of pathway for emerging talent. It's a real opportunity to sell these franchises and to be part of, the kind of global franchise conversation. As it is, the LPL is just a sideshow, and it's a shame for the players. It's a shame for us as fans who want to see a vibrant, flourishing Sri Lankan T20 competition, because it feels to me like it's just going backwards.
Mm-hmm. Estelle, any insight on the ground about this? And what would it mean if they just had to scrap the season? What's sort of the long-term implications in your mind, Estelle?
Yeah, massively disappointing, right? Because we've had ownership issues basically right throughout. It feels like the only kind of stable owners have been in the first couple of seasons for the Jaffna Stallions, right? And since then, every team has had issues. There have been payment issues. I've heard that some players have, or some teams have not paid players at all. Stuff like that. So incredibly disappointing. I think it's hard to imagine that it would be this tough to run a T20 competition, particularly as they seem to be flourishing all around the world, right? I mean, you've got competitions basically in every country now. I mean, nobody thinks it's going to be IPL level, right? It's not going to be there, but there's a real opportunity to make it even the second or third biggest league in the world, just given that, as Nick mentioned, the proximity to India and kind of the relationships that Sri Lanka Cricket has had previously with the BCCI, in terms of them kind of treating us like the little brother, taking care of Sri Lanka a little bit. So that's why I think it's been very disappointing, because it feels like it would have been the perfect kind of thing to have maybe even a couple of IPL teams interested in having a team in the LPL, but that never seems to have come to fruition. I think a couple of years ago, I heard a rumor. I don't know how far this is true, so I mean, don't take my word for it, but this is simply a rumor that even Mumbai Indians was interested, but they didn't like that it was a 5-team tournament, and the setup was weird, and there was no window for the competition and things like that. So these teams, they run on stability, right? Like big teams, they're putting a lot of money in. They want stability. They don't want 1 year you're playing it in August, then in November, then in December, then you're back to August, then you're trying to play it in June. They don't want that kind of disruption. So it's, I think, really disappointing. I think if it doesn't happen, I mean, I don't know if we can say that Sri Lanka has necessarily produced any star players out of the LPL, apart from a couple who we've seen really flourish. But it's certainly brought a lot of new names into the market, right? Like guys like Karunaratne maybe would not be spoken of too much if it wasn't for the LPL, where he kind of showed, his ambidexterity, and that would be a huge blow, I think, for players, because it's not just the financials, right? It's also about getting your name and people being able to like see you. Like even if you don't get to play for Sri Lanka,
Yep.
other franchise leagues, other competitions around the world. I mean, I saw from the women's team some players like Malsha Shehani playing in the Japanese league. Sure, it might not be a huge quality league, but for players who don't make it to international cricket, it's about making a living as well, right? So competitions like this provide that opportunity for them.
Yeah, I think Yushant has made a really good point here that the LPL should not run after money, but copy the Super Smash. Nobody talks about it outside of New Zealand, but it's run well, right? That's what we want. It doesn't really matter if this is, we have 7 or 8 big leagues that have big, sort of followings and everyone talks about. But the purpose of this league is not to reproduce in Sri Lanka the IPL. It's to create a space for our players to develop skills, right? That should be the goal first and foremost, I think. So for me, and we talked about this before, one of the things that I've personally struggled with is that these younger players have gotten sidelined, right? We've seen younger players sidelined for, like we saw Pawan Ratnayaka batting at number 9, right? So I think it's that kind of stuff that we want to see changing. So we'll see. Hopefully it still runs. Hopefully these are rumors that are not actually substantiated. Maybe we'll get some investment from, like, sort of a lifeline thrown to us from an IPL squad. Because I guess the other thing that's frustrating is we know the IPL is heavily scouting the island and seeing what players and what talents they have.
Yeah.
They have no problem finding the players, but the fact that they don't want to actually invest in the league that tells you something, right? Awesome. Okay, last topic. This is a fun one. Tonight, going on right now, is Sri Lanka Cricket's awards show. I think they've just wrapped up all the awards. And off air, we shared a little bit of a laugh about some of the nominations because they released the nominations list. Nick, I'll turn to you. What's your number one howler from this nominations list?
I think it's hard to look past the Harshita, was it ODI or T20 all-rounder? T20 all-rounder where she hasn't bowled a ball, and I think she's bowled, 4 overs in ODI cricket. I mean, I don't think she would describe herself as an all-rounder, so it's very generous of
Maybe it's the fielding.
Yeah, maybe it's the fielding. And as I think best T20 batter was that one. I mean, I think that if these are the quality of shortlist candidates, maybe don't release shortlists and just offer up the award, because it's fine. Not every country has 3 all-rounders in every it's not a knock on Sri Lanka that there aren't 3 quality all-rounders in the T20 side. But maybe could have done without releasing the shortlist.
Estelle, thoughts on that? Any other ridiculous finds?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, like, just as I got the list and I shared it with you guys, I was like, Harshita's nominated for all-rounder award. Because, like, she hasn't... Harshita Samaravikrama could bowl, right? I mean, she started... I don't think in international cricket, but domestic cricket, she's a medium pacer. She was a medium pacer. But, I mean, as Nick mentioned, she bowled 4 overs in ODI cricket, probably really early on in her career, and has not bowled in T20 cricket. So that, I think it's possibly just a mistake. I don't know if they were trying to nominate somebody else. I don't know. But yeah, that gave me a bit of a chuckle. I got the message from a couple of other friends as well, look who they've nominated. And I completely agree with Nick on the fact that not every country has 3 all-rounders, right? In all 3 formats. It's all right. You don't have to nominate 3 people, especially people who have not bowled during the year. So
it was very interesting. So the one thing that this wasn't a howler, but for the best ODI batter, I think they had Patham Nissanka, they had Charith, and they had Jonathan Lianage. and they left Kusal Mendes off the list, who was the leading run scorer in ODI cricket for the world in 2024, which I thought was interesting. Like, no offense to any of the guys listed, but that I wouldn't have picked Jonathan Lianage as the third person. But the awards have come out, and basically, it's that there are some interesting things. So Chamri won best bowler in T20Is for the Sri Lankan women's team, and that kind of doubles down on an issue we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Right, wicket takers. We need wicket takers for that side. She also won best batter and best all-rounder, which would make sense. So if you're already the best, if you're the best bowler and batter, you're definitely the best all-rounder. She won the best batter award for ODIs. Kavisha takes it for ODI best bowler, but Chamri again wins for best all-rounder. I think that was probably the closest of the competitions, I would say. I think Kavisha has done enough to kind of push that envelope in terms of being potentially the best all-rounder. For men, the best batter was Kusal Mendes in T20 cricket, and Hasaranga wins for the best bowler. That's probably, I would say, those two, there's some debate around. I think Kusal does deserve it, but you could definitely give a shout to Patham, the way he was batting at the beginning of the year. Best bowler is a tough one. Anyone else? Anyone other than Wanindu for best bowler?
I think Hasaranga deserved it. Just a side point from me. Why are they running the 2024 awards in June 2025? Like, is this for the calendar year of 2024? Because I saw Lianage won Emerging Cricketer of the Year, and it was like he made his debut so long ago. I've just looked it up. It was the very start of 2024.
Yeah. So this was a great point, right? So Jonathan won the Emerging Player of the Year. Now, it again gets to this issue we've been talking about. What do we mean by emerging players, right? Because he's 29 years old. Also interesting is, I guess it's internally, because someone like Eshan Malinga, whose emergence in 2024 was like a worldwide storyline, is not on this list. I think it was Jonathan Lianage and Milan Ratnayaka as well. Other controversial ones I saw, Prabhath won for best test bowler, which I thought was an interesting choice. I might have put up Asitha given what he did in England.
Yeah, I agree, Dom. I think Asitha he's the guy who you can go to in any conditions, right? And he was tireless in that England tour and has done everything that's been asked of him in Sri Lanka. I guess with the amount of wickets Prabha's taken at home. That's
the thing, right? I think it's basically judged on who's taken the most wickets.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing, because it's similar to how like player of the match is chosen, right? You might have a guy who's made a 30 who's really actually changed the match around, but the guy who's made a 50 is going to get the award. So
Dhananjaya De Silva won for best all-rounder, test all-rounder. And he actually bowled he took 10 wickets. That's maidens. How many wickets did he take this year? He took 6 wickets this year, which tells you the state of all-rounders in Sri Lanka's test side. And he's a very he's been a reluctant test bowler, I think.
Yeah, I think he's had a few injuries, right? Hand injuries and stuff with his fingers and stuff.
Yeah. Chamri again wins Women's Cricketer of the Year award. Because, as Nick said, we're so far from 2024.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget all the great things that were accomplished. So just another shout out for Chamri's amazing 2024, which included a 195 against South Africa for the largest ever chase, winning the Asia Cup and being the player of the Asia Cup. This is almost now a year away, but Chamri's brilliance in 2024 should absolutely not be overlooked, particularly in the shorter formats. It was a year for the ages from her. And then Men's Cricketer of the Year is Kamindu Mendes. Yeah. I think that's well deserved.
Yeah,
absolutely well deserved.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the big storylines in Sri Lankan cricket going forward is what's next from Kamindu? Where does he go now that he's kind of going to be the hunted, right? Everyone's going to be looking at that Sri Lankan side and say, okay, who do we have to get out? Kamindu is going to be the first name on that list. And when you're targeted, how do you adjust and how do you grow going forward? How does he take those amazing learnings that he's had in the IPL and apply them in the white ball format? So it's also a reminder to this whole award ceremony of how quickly things go, right? So on that emerging list, you had Jonathan Lianage and Nishan Pires, both of whom are kind of on the outs for the sides that they showed talent for in that 2024 calendar year. So it's always a reminder that things change very, very quickly in Sri Lankan cricket. Okay. Fantastic. Anything anyone else wants to add before we sign off for the day?
I think we had one question on Matheesha.
Yes.
Maybe we can take that.
Absolutely. Yes, I saw this and I wanted to address it. Do you think Matheesha should be looked at for the test squad? Now, to frame it, I think Fiona's asked a great question. There's a debate between two legends about this. I believe Malinga said that Matheesha should bowl in test cricket, and Dhoni said absolutely not. So what do you guys think of the possibility of Matheesha bowling in the test side?
The possibility, I don't think there's a possibility that he'll make it in, right, Nick?
I don't think so. I mean, in a world of purely hypotheticals, I don't hate it, but doesn't like 2 days of bowling 3 spells back to back break his body and we never see him bowl again.
And also, I think you don't need him, right? Like you don't need. There are better bowlers than him. Like for the test format, there are better bowlers in Sri Lanka right now. So I don't think it's not like he could be the best test bowler that Sri Lanka has ever seen, and we don't want to play him because we don't want to hurt him. I think there's genuinely better bowlers for that format in the setup right now. So I don't see it as a big issue. I mean, again, with the action, that's we're again left with like what's going to happen, right? We don't know what's going to happen going forward because he did struggle with consistency with the higher arm action. Is that due to some kind of injury, or is it injury prevention, or what's going on? We don't know. Like, no one's clear about it. So I mean, I don't think it's really something that you should be thinking about right now. Like, he's quite young as well, right? So maybe when he matures, when he bulks up a little bit and he's kind of strong enough, maybe it's a consideration you can make once he's established himself. But right now, I don't think it's a real question because you've got players who can provide so much more in the test arena.
Yeah, on the Matheesha point, two things that come to mind is if the change in action is an injury prevention thing, I think that's a good thing. We should remember he's still very, very young, and when he broke into sort of the IPL and the international squads, he was wayward even with his old action. So it's something that he got better at over time, and I'd imagine even bowling from this angle, he'll get better. He'll get better consistency as he practices, as he develops. The second thing is, I agree with Estelle and Nick that he's probably not going to play test cricket. But one thing Sri Lanka should consider is as the ODI format, I don't know when the change is going to happen, but they're going to do away with the second new ball for the final 15 overs. So they're going to have kind of a older ball. They've absolutely got to look at getting Pathirana into the one-day side, because I'd love to see Eshan Malinga and Pathirana bowling with that old, like slightly old ball in one-day cricket at the end of the overs, and seeing what kind of damage they can do. So that, for me, maybe not test cricket, but maybe we can start thinking about how we can use him as an asset in one-day cricket.
Definitely ODI cricket, right? One thing I would ask you guys, something that I felt like I clocked is that Pathirana with the higher arm angle hasn't quite hit the pace that he was hitting last year, where he was like seeming to be, there was a while when he was consistently north of 150, right? and he hasn't quite got back up there. I don't know. Is that just some? Is that, am I wrong about that, or are you guys seeing the same thing?
I guess my
Yeah.
again, I haven't seen the data. I would say he's bowling more mid 140s. But again, if it's an accuracy, if it's like a sort of mechanical question, right? Like with the, when he broke into the IPL, he wasn't hitting 140 even, right? He was sort of like high 130. So as he gets used to the action, will the accuracy and speed increase? I mean, that's my hope, is that when you're dealing with a 23-year-old player and you change his action, you just got to give him some time to adjust. But that's my thought.
Because I do think if you've got a guy with a freakish action bowling 150 plus, especially somewhere like Gaul where you see seamers not often carrying a big workload, it's kind of intriguing, right? If he can come in and crack something open when nothing's going on, reverse swing the ball. There's a little tiny part of me that, out of some kind of morbid curiosity, wants to see Matheesha Pathirana play a test match at some stage.
Yeah, absolutely. There is that morbid curiosity. It would be cool if.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It would be very cool if, but I'm not sure we will ever see it happen.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have for today. So, if you're watching, you made it to the end, give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're all on Twitter, so you can find us there. We all have our handles. Subscribe to Cricket Smash on YouTube, and we will be back next week to cover this test series and more things going on in Sri Lanka cricket. This has been the Murali End, and we will see you soon. Bye.